All right, the coach is in. We are your hosts, Kat and Irene.
I'm Irene. I moved to the US on my own 10 years ago. I have a background in management engineering, earned my master's degree from Columbia, and secured my permanent residence through work. I spent my career in real estate and am now a certified coach and credited with the IES.
And I'm Kat. My parents came to the States from the Philippines in the 1960s and landed in Milwaukee, where I was born. I now live in Chicago with my 2 daughters and husband. I've always been multi-passionate and multi-hyphenate, and presently I serve others as an attorney, podcaster, and in the personal development space as a retreat host and as a certified coach as well.
Join us as we share our stories and hear from business leaders, generational pioneers, and experts as we discuss the personal, relational, and professional challenges we, immigrants, and children of immigrants face. Hi, welcome everyone. We often find ourselves working towards our goals to the detriment of our well being. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about some strategies and tips on how to prioritize our well being while still working on achieving our goals.
Yes, Irene, you summarized it beautifully. I share some stories about times when life kind of threw us for a loop, but as Irene mentioned, like how do we accommodate that while still making progress and showing ourselves grace, taking values-based actions and, continuing to move forward while also living in alignment with what we prioritize.
In addition to that, we also covered paying attention to what our bodies tell us because there's a lot of wisdom that a lot of us haven't tapped into in how our bodies tell us what it needs, whether that's rest or being able to unlock more potential and more strength to be able to achieve our goal. And with that said,
Here's our conversation. Good morning, Irene. I'm so thrilled to be sitting here with you again. How are you? Tell me a little about yourself today.
good afternoon from my end in the East Coast. It seems like it was just yesterday that we spoke to each other, even though it's probably been 2 weeks since our last
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
How time flies. I'm doing great. We were just talking about the weather. It's excruciatingly hot outside.
Yes.
So I hope everyone stay taking care of themselves, keeping hydrated, and taking good care of ourselves.
Yes, yes. And, I love that you brought up the heat because it actually segues nicely into something that's been bouncing around my mind to talk about a little bit, which is
Mhm.
acting with grace and showing yourself grace when unforeseen circumstances crop up that invariably have to take priority or have to impact what it is that you're trying to do. Um, and I think heat is a perfect example. Like it was in the 90s, both where Irene lives and where I live in Chicago. And it makes it so that yard work, athletic pursuits outdoors, hosting of events at certain times of the day, like there's suddenly all of these other considerations. And your ability to operate the way you expected yourself to is probably going to be really tough. My daughter had a speed training camp this past week, and it was late mornings, like around 11 o'clock. But by that time of the morning for a couple of days, it was already 90 degrees out. And, she didn't necessarily hit the times that she might have wanted to. And she was angry and, like just it wasn't comfortable as opposed to, say, a 65-degree spring day when, there's a light breeze and the sun isn't, too intense. So, she knew logistically that there's a reason for less than what she wanted, but it's been fun talking to her and seeing her work through, the emotional aspect of that. Like, it's one thing to acknowledge logistically, like, this is why it didn't happen. It's another thing to not beat yourself up or keep beating yourself up, even if you know it was out of your control. And I think, for myself, that's also something I learned over the past month and a half, just with a really busy schedule that entailed kind of once in a lifetime moments, graduations and confirmations and whatnot. But I took the time to really reflect on setting up calendars and like schedules this past week that it just made me realize like I had to take time away to focus on certain things. And I'm really glad that I did. And there's no point in beating myself up for what didn't happen. Like you show up the best you can given the circumstances you've got. And once you've learned, if there are things to learn from whatever transpired, like one thing I learned is next year when I go through this again with my younger daughter, I will be a little more tempered in my, personal goal setting, and I'll give myself a lot more space to accomplish certain things. But, once you've learned that, there's no point in going back over what didn't happen, what marks you missed, what you wish you would have done differently. It's kind of like bless and release, I guess. So yeah, I kind of went on a long tangent stemming from your comment
No.
about the weather and my daughters and my sort of personal journeys grappling with our own instances of what, yeah, the wrenches that life land in your way, life throws in your way, and how you just have to navigate around them and
Yeah.
yeah.
What a relevant topic. Because I feel like in the conversations that I've been having in recent past, that has been a recurring topic. So, just listening to your stories, I'm very curious as to what catalyzed or what triggered the shift in perspective. Because oftentimes we do beat ourselves up over not reaching a goal because that's how we've been sort of trained to do, right? You do everything you can in your power to reach the goals that you've set for yourself. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, we have to be realistic and be cognizant of the other factors that affect our performance that sometimes it's not within our control. So what catalyzed the shift in perspective for you? When did you realize that
Mm.
it's not your fault?
Yeah. I think it's been a process for sure. So some of the learnings around it I've known for a while. It just gets applied in different instances in different ways. And we touched on this in one of our earlier episodes around knowing your values and being like acting in alignment with those as opposed to and seeing that as a metric of success as opposed to an end destination or some quantifiable thing. So
Mhm.
I've been, you and I know we've both evolved so much through our life coaching journeys. I think that I've known that in many ways, and it's been fascinating to see how it comes up. And it's a practice. It's like meditation or yoga, where you use these tools and these mental muscles over and over. And certainly things get easier and you get better and faster at doing things. But it's not as if you reach some state of enlightenment and nothing will ever cause you to pause or get frustrated or, feel like, why did this happen? Or I wish I was someplace different. It's more that we enable ourselves and, others through our coaching to see past that and to, navigate around it, not let that block us from feeling good about ourselves and getting to where we want. So one really big thing for me was a few years back, getting clear on my values and accepting that prioritizing my family and prioritizing the way I wanted to show up as a partner and a mother, those are my two biggest goals. So that means sometimes the work, the exercise, the whatever goals might be third or fourth, depending on, the day. Uh, so when I was struggling with feeling as if I wasn't reaching some of my hustle goals, um, I just had to look at, what am I doing here? High level. What is my time being devoted to? Like a little bit of a objective audit. And then saying, like, this is not because you're lazy. This is not because you're uh, unfocused. This is because your mom and sister are in town and you're celebrating your older daughter's once in a lifetime eighth grade graduation with them. And realizing, oh, that is completely in alignment with prioritizing how I show up as a mother and how I show up for others that I care about, and reminding myself Yes, that is one of my core, true, highest values. So this has nothing to do with like a character flaw on my part or a shortcoming on my behalf. If anything, this is evidence that I am functioning in alignment with who I really want to be. And it's sometimes just rejiggering and accepting like there's only so many hours in the day. As long as the hours in your day are aligned with um, your true values, then you can chalk it up as a win. It may not look the way you want it to, but remembering what those values are and tying back to them for me has been really powerful.
Right. What you're talking about, and I love that you said you're basically prioritizing your values, right? And reframing the judgment because oftentimes we attach our self-worth to whatever achievements we have. And when we don't achieve our goals, it sets us back in how we view ourselves without acknowledging all the other good things that are going on in our lives that, perhaps we've invested the time in our relationships and our families that might not necessarily have made it to the goals that we have set for ourselves, but these are pretty much the values that the highest values actually that supersede whatever goals we have set for ourselves in it kind of reminds me of what one of my good mentors told me, and she said, Irene, you want to finish the race. You don't want to sprint through life. You want to be a runner, right? Which means that you want to be able to finish the race sustainably. You don't want to go fast and hard because you're going to run out of gas.
Mm,
Right? Which only means to say that, you might not have achieved the goal that you set for yourself right now, but there's a good time and place for it, right? Because you have your priorities and your values change over time and what your priorities are. So there is a trust that you have the time to be able to achieve your goals. You may not
mm.
achieve them all at once, but there will come a time for all of the goals that you've set for yourself if they're important enough for you.
Yes, yes. And the at some point, I don't know if it's in this conversation, but I feel like it's a huge topic is the feeling of being behind or wanting to be ahead of where you are. That's real. I don't know if that's generational or cultural, maybe a combination of all of various many things. But it's a real threat to one's, I think, overall sense of well-being and joy, to your point about you don't want to, you want to be like a runner and finish, finish things, like, and not just sprint. Yeah, there's something to be said for acknowledging whatever progress you made and not just looking at how far you have to go, but for how far you've come. That
Right.
that that's always, as we were talking about kind of personal journeys and coaching, it's something that I try to incorporate a lot is not just, okay, what are you trying to accomplish, but what have you accomplished? Like, what can we celebrate about you? Because so often, especially, I'm not 100% sure of this, but anecdotally, I feel like women have a tendency to, especially high achieving women, think about the things that haven't been checked off to the to-do list and not looking back at all the other checked boxes, that they've accomplished. So, yeah, taking the time to really center yourself where you are and reflecting not just on what you feel you haven't done yet, but also looking at where you've come from can be really impactful as a practice.
Yeah, the movie Barbie really hit the nail on the head when they talked about all the expectations on women and how unrealistic it really is to expect all of these roles to be fulfilled by one person.
Mm,
Um yeah. So I want to go back to the telltale signs of how do we know that we're not being lazy. It's just the reality check because at the beginning of the call, you were talking about like how external factors that are not our fault affect our performance. And sometimes we can beat ourselves up really hard when we don't achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. So how do we differentiate just making excuses versus, hey, this is a real thing that if I keep on running outside for hours and hours when the sun is getting hotter and hotter, I mean, it's not exactly healthy anymore, right? So
Mm,
how do we break that frame of thought wherein like I gotta push harder? Because I know a lot of people who push themselves to the brink of burnout without recognizing the signs within their bodies, the environment telling you to stop.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good topic for discussion. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts as well. Certainly on a personal level, um, kind of tying back to identifying what your core values are. And for me, what's really helped too is uh, looking at the realities of your day. Wherever you are in life, there are likely demands on your time that are immutable. Like I am a parent. And so there are windows of the day when I know my kids are home that I want to spend time with them. Or I do legal work and have like a consulting gig that expects me to be available certain hours of the day. So that is not something I can necessarily use in another way. Uh, and then looking at so a little bit for me, a time audit actually helped me accept the limitations of my schedule. And I think sometimes where burnout comes from is we keep moving the needle of what's possible for me. Like I should be able to do all of this in the same amount of time. And if and I'm guilty of this too, like I still do this because I think it makes sense. But like I will put on a YouTube workout where there's no dialogue. And then on my that's on my TV. And then on my laptop, I will have some sort of like podcast playing or because I figure like, why not become intellectually stimulated while I'm also working out? Like it feels like a win-win. But if
Yes,
we
that
try to, do you do
go
that
ahead, go
too?
ahead. The multitasker in me has been awakened. Go ahead.
Oh, I guess. But for me, something that really helped was not just looking at like, what does my ideal year look like? What am I trying to accomplish in 12 months or even in the quarter? But in a perfect day, what time would I wake up? How much sleep would I get? How much time am I spending with my family? There are things that are non-negotiable. For a lot of people, it's a 9 to 5, which you can't, that is your brain energy is going there. So, and then commutes or whatnot. And then being really intentional and values focused when figuring out what to do with the squares that are left. And even downtime isn't can be intentional. If if I'm watching 4 episodes in a row of Ted Lasso, as long as that was my goal, like this is decompress night with my family and we're all going to watch this. Like if that's the goal, that's great. If my goal was something else and I, let it spiral into something, then maybe, check and do a little evaluation and see what didn't work. But but yeah, for me, figuring out some of the what would my ideal day look like has helped inform my ideal week, which then has hopefully going to continue to inform the like quarterly and yearly evolutions. But I do think accepting the limitations of the realities of your day. I should even take the word limitation out and maybe replace it with realities. And and then tying everything back to or being intentional with your time by identifying those values and then blocking off chunks of time that where you're acting in accordance with that has helped for me.
Mm,
Yeah.
that,
So as an example, when I was in that tough phase with the family of being in town and, all these events for my kids coming up, um, looking at sort of my ideal day and and accepting that when there are things that are immutable and unchangeable, and I can't change the date of my daughter's graduation or the length of the ceremony or how early we have to get there just to get seats, there's uh, once you take a really frank look at the demands of your day and embrace it, and then kind of be realistic with yourself about what do you want to fit into the balance of your time? That was what helped me realize, oh, right. Yes, I'm spending a lot of time doing this other stuff, but A, it's in alignment with values. B, there are small windows of time that I can still make progress towards other things. That helps me feel kind of still in balance in some ways. Like, okay, maybe this train is slow, but it's still, moving very slowly.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, finding those tiny windows of time, and then deciding, is this how I want to spend it? What values do I prioritize, and what may be lacking, and is this the time that I'm going to use this to, fill that goal?
Right. So your stories take me back to a time in my life where I was also an avid multitasker, because I almost treated myself like a robot in that, oh, what's the optimal way to spend my time so that I can produce optimally as well, right? So if I have this TV on, if I'm working on two projects at a time, I can do multiple things with the time that I have.
Mm,
But I have completely turned 180 from that mindset because I wasn't taking care of myself at the time. My sleep and my rest and my self-care would be the least of my priority because the priority was how much I will produce. And I think what has changed is something that you've also mentioned and what you shared, which is self-acceptance, right? So before I was motivated to do things because I was trying to prove something to myself. I was trying to prove something to other people that I am capable, that I am smart, that I am a reliable part of the team. Um, Now I think what's changed for me is I pay attention to my body and what I'm capable of right now, regardless of what other people might think of me and what I might judge myself for as well.
mhm.
And I've sort of reframed that into like, I'm okay right now. I'm okay right now. And I see that example manifest itself when, oh, I might not be doing more than what I usually can when I work out, when I lift weight. Um, I'm compassionate to myself, but then I know that I can push myself a little bit more because my coaches push me to do a little bit more, but that's about it, right? Like I was able to push myself in that day and that's fine. I pay attention to my body and the energy that I have because at some point when you do that consistently, the hard work, um, the suck becomes what energizes you because oh, I was able to do this and I survived and I was able to push myself more. It becomes energizing as opposed to something that I dread over time.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I love that you are drawing upon like a physical sensation in a way, like paying attention to the cues that your body is giving you, because that is definitely, I also think some people, myself included, I can fall into this trap of thinking I can like intellectualize through a situation. Um, and I love that, there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score, or so when your body needs rest and when your body is energized, it's telling you something there that you've been treating it well, or it needs to be given a break. And um, you being in tune with that physical side of you, I think is a really powerful lesson to learn. Like that's helped you ultimately know yourself better, navigate better, and be more healthily productive, not in a
Yeah.
hustle way. Yeah. Um, Tell me more about your fitness like routine, because you alluded a couple of times prior to this call and and during this call, like a kind of, yeah, physical activity. I'm just curious what you're engaged in now.
Oh, I'm not sure if I told you I joined CrossFit in January, supposedly in preparation for the wedding, but the wedding's come and done, and I'm still working out. So it's almost like I have embraced working out into my lifestyle. And I think there are a lot of parallels in my fitness journey with my self-development journey through life coaching also in that I think they have the same philosophy. we want to stay consistent, and we want to be able to grow our build up to the strength, right? So in
Mm.
that way, growth is really, there's no limit to how much you can grow because you're doing it one step at a time,
Mm.
sustainably, as opposed to, oh, feeling like I have to um be able to lift 300-pound weights right away, right?
Mhm.
Because usually, like, if you're coming from a place of I'm not enough, you want to be able to get to those results right away because you want to show people that I can, and in such a short amount of time, effortlessly. That's not what growth looks like. I believe in incremental growth, as
Mm.
opposed to radical growth, because incremental growth is sustainable. You have a foundation. So, if I don't end up working out 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, it won't kill me because, the habit that I've developed sustainably over time is not going to, it's not going to be reversed just because of the 1, 2, 3 days that I wasn't able to
Yeah.
make it to work out.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to, like, trying to get there so fast. Like, if I don't go one day, it's going to be such a blow because, I just didn't get there with a solid foundation.
Mm. Mm. So something this is bringing up for me, which um, I think it all kind of ties together, but the the idea that 1 or 2 days of not showing up at the gym doesn't define you. You've proven to yourself over the course of consistent action, even if it's small, um, like it's your identity now as someone who exercises or someone who prioritizes fitness. And I think that identity shift can be really is really important because to your point, like if you are someone who is so tied to a number, like I have to work out 5 times a week and you don't hit it, if you don't have that history of being someone that routinely incorporates exercise into their lives, then it's you can see why missing that would seem like a failure. But in the longer range view, when there's someone who's taken like a 10-minute walk every day, or not even every day, but just consistently, like they can cut themselves slack because they know they're going to show up again in the future. And it sounds something about that or what you shared really, I think hammers that home for me that there's at some point when you consistently start showing up for yourself in an area that's valuable to you, you you obtain that identity. Like you are the thing that you wanted to be 6 months ago. And you don't have to convince yourself because you have the history of having done it. And that is the confidence that gets you through kind of some of the missteps or the schedule changes or the unexpected kind of life derailments because you've already done the thing that allows you to say like but I'm a runner, but I am someone that prioritizes fitness because you've proven to yourself that you can. And I just love how the the consistency, no matter how small, is what gets you there.
Right. And, if there's anything that I'm taking away from today's call, because I think we started, it wasn't so much about the hurdles or the heat, but how do you achieve your goals, right? Because oftentimes high achievers would like to set big goals, and setting big goals might deter a lot of people from even taking the first step because they think that they have to go big right away, go big or
Hmm.
go home, right?
Yeah.
When what we're realizing in our conversation today really is that the small steps do matter, right? And
Hmm.
to celebrate those small steps and to not
Yep.
discount them will get the ball running. It's like the snowball. You start small, that just keeps going bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
That's pretty much what I'm picking up from our conversation today. What
I
about you, Kat?
yes, I like that you mentioned goals. So I just jotted this down as you were talking, like, yes, how do we achieve our goals? And the importance of taking intentional action in alignment with that. And it dovetails nicely with this idea of consistency. And, if you can kind of get both of those into the same room, then the magic happens.
Yeah. So as we close out our episode today, are there any key takeaways or habits or tips that you would like to share to our audience as it relates to how you approach reaching your goal?
I the thing that's coming up for me is remembering to celebrate your wins, the glow and grow kind of mentality. So when you do your journaling, if you're a journaler or you're connecting with a friend you haven't seen in a while and they're asking how you are, like in addition to talking about the things that you hope to accomplish, the areas that need improvement or you'd like to improve, also remember to talk about those glow areas, those things that you are worth celebrating and you're excited about. I think that having a good balance of those is what keeps us motivated, in addition to yeah, encouraged and moving forward. How about you?
I love that. For me, I go back to paying attention to my body and asking myself, what do I really need right now? Right? Because I think our body has wisdom that we don't usually tap into. We like to intellectualize, as you mentioned earlier, our problems in the way that we make decisions, and that we forget that, oh, our body has actually has a lot to tell us. So
Hmm.
whether that's rest that I need right now, or whether, hey, I can push myself to do more,
Yeah.
our bodies will tell us.
Mm.
So that has been the practice that was a game changer for me. As we wrap today's session, we invite you to reflect on what resonated with you in today's episode. If you're interested in exploring the topic as it relates to your own personal experience, head to the show notes and visit www.thecoachesinpodcast.com. Get ready to break personal, cultural, or generational barriers that get in the way of being the best version of yourself and living the best version